Book. Welcome to my book, The Philosophy of the Ananke. This is Lance Gordon, and we are up to the reading in Chapter 5. We've proceeded to read most of it, but not all of it. So I will continue where we left off in half-an-hour segments. Also, please note there is a link to get the book in its entirety right below this YouTube, in the description area. Okay. The properties of spirit. Through a logical speculation, we have concluded that spirit has the following properties. 1, it has the ability to generate thought. This pure thought requires no material energy in order to operate. In essence, it generates thought by using the counterpart to material energy, namely spiritual energy. This spiritual thought is capable of stimulating matter, as in the case of the brain. The matter in turn may release chemicals or forces which induce other physical activities to happen. The resulting activities obey the laws of Ananke in the case of the associated superspirits. In the case of the soul, the resulting activities may or may not obey Ananke. 5. Both soul and superspirit are independent of matter. They, like electrons, are both separate from their opposites, but associated with their opposites in a strongly bonded way. They are bonded to the equilibrium body in question, yet they are separate from it. In addition to the above, matter needs spirit out of necessity. It needs an opposite in order to keep it in balance. Conversely, we can reason that spirit may need matter in order to keep itself in balance. There'll be updates dealing with this at the end of the book. In other words, does the electron keep the proton nucleus in balance, or does the proton nucleus keep the electron in balance? In reality, they both need to balance each other. The dynamic equilibrium, called the atom, requires both opposites in order to exist. In a similar way, life needs matter and spirit in order to exist. But what happens when the nucleus is separated from its electrons? What happens when the atom, quote-unquote, dies? In nature, the electrons scatter into the emptiness of the universe until they are used once more. Another atomic nucleus may be forming in a neighboring quadrant of space. It may require an electron in order to balance itself out. The electron has no choice. It bonds to the proton nucleus and becomes a unity once more. The electron is attracted to its opposite, the proton. The electron was free for a very short while. The forces of nature determined the outcome. By analogy, the spirit may be independent to the degree that it too can wander space for a short while, if the physical equilibrium system, quote-unquote, dies. When atoms form, the superspirit may be drawn into it. The superspirit may not have a choice. Therefore, matter may need spirit, and spirit may need matter. Does God exist? At this point in our logical speculation, we have deduced that a superconscious mind or spirit may be associated with all the dynamic equilibrium systems in the universe. We found that it was necessary as an opposition to the matter that was involved. It was needed in order to keep the matter in balance. We found that the superconscious spirit seemed to obey Ananke and was therefore non-reflective and non-whimsical. We also speculated that it was an independent entity, having the powers of pure, directed thought. We concluded that some systems of equilibrium seem to depend upon environmental conditions of the present moment in a unique manner. A property of these systems was that responses could not be dictated from the rules of the past. Events must be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. For these purposes, independent expressions of the superconsciousness exist. We called it soul, or the conscious mind of living creatures. Since equilibrium systems are the norm in the universe, we can assume that at the very least the superspirit exists throughout it. The superspirit is even reflected in our subconscious minds. It is necessarily associated with the dynamic equilibrium systems that we see all around us. But are these associated spirits independent of each other? Are they independent like conscious spirits seem to be? Do they manifest unique behaviors? No, they don't. All systems of equilibrium that are not alive, quote-unquote, seem to behave the same way. They all conform to the patterns of Ananke. One hydrogen atom appears to operate the same exact way as another. That is why they are predictable. If spirit is guiding the actions of particle, of particle equilibrium behavior, then it appears that the spirit is not divided. It does not operate as if there were numerous independent spirits. There is a sameness that is reflected in the fact of the Ananke concept of a singular order. Either there are billions of separate spirits that happen to direct activities in the same way, or there's only one spirit that directs the superconscious activities of all the dynamic equilibrium systems. Which alternative shall we choose? By the theorem of unity, we must choose the speculation that only one spirit exists and is associated with the largest dynamic equilibrium system called the universe. This universe of ours seems to undulate in a perpetual motion that starts with the Big Bang and ends with a dense homogeneous ball of matter. Therefore, it too deserves an associated spirit to guide its overall activity. The one spirit is needed to the matter in the universe as we are to our bodies. This one spirit is the superconscious component to all the equilibrium systems in the universe. The spirit supplies the coordinated thought that guides all matter to take action towards its goal of eternal peace. It utilizes the abundant energy in matter in order to achieve its goal of balance between all things. The spirit utilizes energy, but is not energy. It may store and retrieve information, but it is not memory. It is pure, non-reflective, non-whimsical, independent thought. It can be viewed as similar to the feeling of I exist. It is reflected by the Jewish word Yahweh, Jehovah, which literally translated means I am that I am. This associated spirit to the universe seems to behave as if it follows the laws of Ananke. Perhaps it dictates the laws of Ananke. Perhaps this associated super spirit to our universe is God. And perhaps the behavior of God is this Ananke, the ultimate order of things in our universe. Next section. Why is God needed? Let me just check the time. Okay. We now have deduced that a universal superconsciousness may indeed exist. It is the ultimate opposing force to the entire physical universe. Its behavior is reflected in the four patterns of Ananke. It guides the universe towards its ultimate goal of peace. But why is this superconscious mind needed? Can't Ananke exist by itself? Can't we stop with a mechanism and forget this conjecture about God? Why must there be a God, a universal spirit, a oneness of thought? Let us approach this question from another angle. If you recall, the most likely universe by chance alone could be considered a universe of chaotic motion originating from the Big Bang. All particles that explode are more likely to wander to the corners of empty space forever. This is by far an easier, least energy solution. Everything just continues moving with no opposition. It's not complicated, it's simple. Since the chance universe is the least energy solution, then an ordered universe of any degree must require energy beyond this chance universe scenario in order to function. Another possibility to this needed energy is to merely convert the available kinetic energy into the various forms of potential energy. This can be done by slowing the expansion of the universe and making the energy return from whence it came. In this manner, a closed system is created whereby perpetual motion is possible. No further material energy needs to be introduced as long as no material energy escapes. But what mechanism is stopping the motion? It would be simpler to let it go. Why does gravity exist? Why do these cohesive forces exist? How are they maintained? And why does there seem to be an ultimate purpose to all things? We know that the ultimate purpose of balance seems to be evident, as was deduced in previous chapters. We know that negative change is inevitable and occurs continuously throughout the universe. Therefore, the tendency for balance is a continuous operation requiring continuous direction. It could be that continuous direction of equilibrium, peace, harmony, and tranquility is merely a continuous thought. Or shall I say, I said that wrong. Could it be that the continuous direction of equilibrium, peace, harmony, and tranquility is merely a continuous thought? Could the act of thinking a single thought over and over again produce this tendency? Perhaps an analogy will answer this question. When we want to accomplish something, we tend to set our goals and focus our attention on that goal. As opportunities come our way, we tend to select those opportunities that support this goal that we keep in the back of our minds. We disregard all expenditures of energy that go against this goal. When the situation is right, we tend to use similar techniques in order to exploit the opportunity at hand. In this manner, given enough time, our goal is reached. Eventually, if we don't die, we are bound to achieve any goal that we set. Is this not the way Ananke seems to operate? When particles pass each other by chance alone, Ananke acts in order to bond them together. It takes advantage of the situation. So perhaps the goal of this Ananke is to keep in the back of its quote-unquote mind. I'm sorry, I said that again. I said that wrong. So perhaps the goal of this Ananke is kept in the back of its quote-unquote mind. Perhaps the continuous thought of peace is needed in order for the goal of peace to be accomplished. And if a continuous thought is required, then who or what is doing the thinking? Therefore, there is a good possibility that this continuously repeated thought comes from the phenomena, or phenomenon, we call God. This mind supplies the continuous direction, the thought energy, the spiritual energy that is needed in order to stimulate the cohesive forces of the universe to occur. If the cohesive forces are maintained, then the rest follows. Chance occurrences are exploited. Eventually, eternal peace and balance for all is achieved. Thus, we can view the primary thought of God as peace. Since thoughts are reflected in what we call words, then we can consider the word of God to be peace. Therefore, God, the one spirit, the ultimate mind, seems to be necessary as an opposition to matter. Moreover, it generates the necessary continuous thought of balance or peace, which in turn maintains the state of dynamic equilibrium in the universe. Without this continuous thought energy, this spiritual energy, all would seek the scenario of the chance universe. All would be in a state of destruction and ultimate chaos. There would be no light, there would be no day. Darkness would have no meaning, and life would never exist. The universe would be a place where all would wander aimlessly, forever. Where is God? At this point, we will assume that a supermind exists and has properties as described above. But where does this non-reflective consciousness reside? If it is an entity, then where is it located? Where is this God? There are two mutually exclusive possibilities to the answer to this important topical question. Let us examine the speculative facts that have been established so far. On the one hand, God must influence particles and energy to come into the dynamic equilibrium states that we see in the universe. On the other hand, God must manifest itself in all the established equilibrium systems in order to maintain the desired balance of form. Therefore, God's location must be accessible to all the matter and energy in the universe, independent of the matter's location in space. The two possibilities are that either God exists in a strongly coupled state with matter and energy, or God exists in the fabric of space itself, not bonded to any matter at all. The second possibility is intriguing. If God resides in the fabric of space itself, then each point in space would contain intrinsically the Ananke of God. In other words, matter or energy, by virtue of occupying the space in our universe, would necessarily conform to the behavior of this God. If another universe existed, then another God and Ananke would exist as well. In that universe, all would obey different laws. There would be a purpose, but this purpose could differ from the goal of peace and balance. It would be the purpose of that God. This scheme would be analogous to the domain of our conscious minds. Our soul resides in the space contained in our heads. The matter which occupies the space, our brains, must obey our conscious thoughts. The result of this interaction is more or less consistent behavior pattern that is uniquely us. It is our personality. Another space may exist, another set of behaviors may occur. This would be the domain of another soul. Unfortunately, there are numerous contradictions to this speculative logic. As an example, consider the following. Human beings walk around. The Earth is moving at a great speed throughout the space of our universe. Since empty space cannot be contained by matter, the space within our heads must vary all the time. Therefore, our soul cannot reside in any given location. It cannot be bound to space. If it were bound, then our consciousness would vary from moment to moment depending on the space it occupied. We could never feel the consistency that is reflected by the thought of I exist. Since the soul is an extension of the superspirit, it follows that the superspirit cannot reside in the fabric of space by analogy. Another contradiction would be reflected by the argument that the space residence theory would lead us to the conclusion that God could exist without matter. This contradicts our previous finding that matter seems to need spirit and spirit seems to need matter. Moreover, if God could exist without matter, then logically one could conclude that life has no purpose. And this is a fantastic practical joke by the biggest prankster of all of them. Although this is a possibility, it is less likely than a speculation that delivers purpose. If the universe has a single purpose, as reflected by the Ananke, then shouldn't we? Therefore, the space residence theory is probably not true. We must examine the alternate hypothesis, that is to say, God resides in all matter and energy in a tightly coupled, bonded state. Moreover, God must reside in matter, as we must reside in the flesh of our brains. God has no choice, as in the case of all life. All matter and energy is its flesh. The results of this theory are fantastically satisfying. If we assume that the superconscious, non-reflective, non-whimsical mind called God must exist in matter, then the previous contradictions would not occur and the following would become apparent. 1. God has the ultimate purpose of peace, balance, and unity of activity in order to preserve itself. In other words, the chance universe scenario would kill God. God is self-interested. It wants to live in a similar manner to our desire for life. God preserves its body as we preserve ourselves. It repairs, maintains, and promotes its internal balance as we do. 2. Soul and superspirit will always be connected to matter. This matter may be in the form of a physical mass or merely material energy. Neither God nor the billions of souls on earth can escape the opposite called matter. We may wander for a while, but we will be attracted to our opposites, for they need us. Matter needs us, and we need matter. According to this theory, spirit and matter form a state of necessary equilibrium. They keep each other in balance. It would be logical to assume that an opposite to this unity would exist. Upon reflection, the answer becomes obvious. The opposite must have the properties of non-matter and non-spirit. In essence, it must have nothing. What do we see in the universe that has absolutely nothing to it? The answer is ridiculously simple. The answer is empty space. So space has the property of being the opposite to matter and spirit. It opposes the unity of mind and body. It supplies the vacuum force, the suction power that makes things want to scatter and blow apart. It is the origin of the disruptive forces in all things. It is the source of the tendency towards destruction and disharmony. It is the void that opposes the God-matter unity. Thus, by assuming this theoretical speculation, we eliminate all known contradictions and we explain all the elements of the universe that we see and feel. Matter needs spirit, spirit needs matter. Space, the vacuum, opposes the matter-spirit equilibrium. The matter-spirit balance opposes space. The universe expands and contracts, thereby reflecting the struggle between space and non-space. This conflict produces a defined area of activity. The activity can strain and expand this boundary, but it can never break it. In essence, the activity of the universe is contained by the opposing forces of space and non-space. In the light of this scheme, we are presently in the phase of consolidation. Non-space is winning the battle temporarily. The major tendency is towards balance, peace, and consolidation. For now, the objective is clear. For the next 30 billion years or so, peace and balance for all is the flow. This is still the pattern of the Ananke. Thus, the unity of the cosmos is preserved by assuming this theory. Therefore, the theory that God needs to reside in matter and energy is more likely than any other speculation. Does God communicate? If God resides in all matter, then we must be able to communicate with it in some way. How can we communicate to this non-reflective mind which resides in our brains? Does it communicate with us? Is there a mechanistic procedure that we can follow? Can we speculate an answer? Very simply speaking, God reveals itself through logic and emotions. On the one hand, God is the logos of the universe. It is the logical, moralistic thought. Therefore, by understanding Ananke, which is logical and in a sense moralistic, we begin to understand the behavior of God. We begin to hear its words. By becoming skilled at applying the four patterns to unique situations, we begin to increase our vocabulary. Thus, by observing the patterns of nature, and by fitting the known facts together, we begin to learn the language of this non-reflective superconsciousness. On the other hand, our emotions are extremely useful. Actions that we must take must think right and feel right. The feeling of pain sometimes coincides with going against the flow. Therefore, if we feel pain, we must examine the circumstances for short and long-term balance. The mechanism of God is signaling us to reflect on our thoughts and actions. Sure, some pain is inevitable, but excessive pain beyond the norm should be examined. This is still communicating with God. Remember, pain is a thought. On the more positive side, the feeling of pleasure coincides with getting back into balance, at least in the short run. The danger is that the short-run pleasure may deliver long-term imbalance. So we still must use our own conscious minds in order to decide the pros and cons of the pleasurable action. If the pros outweigh the cons over the long haul, then we may want to take the action. If the pleasurable activity has minimal negative side effects for all involved, then why not do it? The result of this pleasure will be a relaxed, calm, peaceful feeling. This is the flow of Ananke. Therefore, this type of pleasure would necessarily be good. In summary, the positive and negative feelings that we receive are merely thoughts in disguise. They signal us when an activity or a state of affairs may be towards the good, our balance, or towards the bad, our imbalance. These feelings must be filtered through the patterns of Ananke in order to confirm their validity. Those feelings that think bad and feel bad we should not do. Those feelings that think good and feel good we should do. In this manner, God speaks to us all, to all of us. God wants us to feel relaxed and be in balance while we do the necessary work of life. God wants peace and balance for all. The primary purpose of life. In previous sections, we demonstrated that all spirit, including God, must reside in matter. There is no choice. As a consequence of this deduction, we begin to understand the primary pattern of all living organisms, the pattern of purpose that is universal to all life. From the insects to man, the same pattern of primal purpose exists. That pattern is survival. The logic follows. If the spirit must reside in matter, then the soul must reside in the equilibrium state called the body. It is separate from the body, but connected to it in a closely bonded way. It is pure, independent thought, which is attracted to its opposite. It is compelled to reside there and preserve the balance of its internal process for as long as it can. Remember, the tendency of the universe is towards its balance forever. I am not suggesting the universe can achieve this goal. It only tends towards this target in this phase. Since we are the products of this universe, we tend toward our balance forever. In essence, we have inherited this tendency of ours. We are compelled to survive for as long as we can. Therefore, a necessary purpose, a primary purpose to our lives, becomes the simplicity of survival. We have no choice. We must live in matter and keep that matter in balance for as long as we can. However, we do have help in this enterprise. God is along for the ride as well. It needs our body too. It wants us to survive as long as we can for its sake. But since it resides in all creatures simultaneously, it cares about the whole more than its parts. It cares about all creatures more than any individual species. It cares about the survival of the species more than the survival of any particular group within the species. God will minimize death and destruction, but only in priority. God wants peace and balance among all things for its own sake. God wants to survive in a least destructive way. God wants to preserve and maintain all life for as long as it can. Life is the dynamic equilibrium called body and mind. Therefore, life is holy to God since it fulfills the goal of the balance of body. In essence, life is good. The soul and afterlife. And I want to see what time we have right now. We're at 24 minutes. I may be able to do one more. The soul and afterlife. Our speculative logic has delivered some interesting conclusions. 1. Spirit exists and resides in all matter and energy. 2. Spirit is the necessary opposite to matter. 3. Matter needs spirit, and spirit needs matter in order to create a balanced situation. 4. The spirit-matter equilibrium has an opposite called space. 5. The conflict between space and non-space produces the perpetual undulation of all activities that exist. This conflict produces the primary cycle of the expanding, contracting universe. This primary cycle, which contains the elements of two opposing primary entities, conforms to the primary pattern of Ananke. 6. Spirit can be divided into two categories. It can be divided into a superconscious component and a conscious one. 7. The superconscious mind conforms to the behavior symbolized by Ananke. It acts as if it were one, even though it exists in all matter. We call the superconscious component of all matter, this oneness of thought, this one mind, God. 8. God is non-reflective, non-whimsical, pure directed thought. Its behavior conforms to Ananke. Ananke, the order, the repetitive patterns, may be viewed as emanating from it. 9. God resides in matter and energy only. It does not reside in the void of space. Where matter is, God is. In this sense, God is omnipresent. However, God is not everywhere. It is not in pure space. It is not in the void. 10. God can utilize the abundant energy of matter. God can store information in matter. God is the most powerful, coordinating force of all. In this sense, God is omnipotent. However, God is not all-powerful. This is not a perfect universe. The goal of peace has not been achieved. God takes time to act. Its behavior, Ananke, will prevail. God will continue to live forever. 11. This pure thought that we call God can be reflected by the expression, I am that I am. It can think, therefore it exists. We can think, therefore we are. I can think, therefore I am. 12. The conscious form of spirit differs from God in that it is reflective and sometimes whimsical. The conscious form of spirit is the soul. 13. The soul depends upon the superconsciousness. It cannot maintain the body alone. The soul tries to conform to the way of God. It tries to obey Ananke. It tries to seek the good. 14. When the soul chooses actions that go with the flow, then it experiences positive feelings that endure. When the soul chooses actions that go against the flow, then it experiences negative feelings that endure. The soul seems to be motivated to find, quote-unquote, the way. 15. The soul and God must reside in matter. They are compelled to reside or survive in the least destructive way. Therefore, survival in a least negative way becomes a primary purpose. We are compelled to survive for as long as we can. We prefer to live forever. But why should we try to live as long as we can? If life is too hard, then why not end it? Can we end our connection with the system called life? If you recall, we have concluded that the soul, the feeling that I exist, is independent of the body. Yet it must seek a body to reside in. It is the opposite to the entity called body and will be attracted by it. But where does the soul go when the body dies? When it is released from its purpose, does it disintegrate? Although this is a possibility, it is less likely than some other more logical speculation. Remember the story of the electron? When the nucleus disintegrated or quote-unquote died, did the electron die? No, it did not. The electron was allowed to wander in space temporarily until an opposite came its way. When a proton was felt, the electron was compelled to orbit its opposite entity. The electron was needed. It was used by the universe. It had no choice. This suggests that the soul is passed on to a new body or state of equilibrium that requires its talents. But is it passed on to any arbitrary body, or is there a logic to this process? Is there a logic to the process called reincarnation? Can we speculate the answer? What is the soul that is passed on? What will we feel? Let us first address the properties of soul. Soul is not memory, therefore we will not remember this life. Soul is not material energy, therefore we will not feel tired due to this life. Soul is the essence of conscious thought. It is the feeling of I am. Therefore, we will feel that we always existed. Is this it? Does the cycle go nowhere? Can this cycle have no purpose when the whole universe seems to have a single purpose? It can have no purpose, but this is less likely than any other speculation that delivers purpose. Perhaps we can analyze it in the following way. When we dream, our soul does not recall the previous day's activities, yet the effects of the wakeful day may be transferred in order to shape the dream. A bad day may produce a nightmare. A good day may produce a peaceful dream. In a similar sense, the soul may not recall a previous life, but the events of that life may shape the tone of the next. But how do the events shape the next life? The events may not shape the next life directly, but they may in an indirect manner. The events may shape the soul, which in turn is attracted by an appropriate body, by an appropriate life. The events are the actions that the soul precipitates, and the actions that are done to it. So the way we handle the activity in life will determine the resulting shape of our soul when we die. But what is the shape of our soul? What property of soul is shape? It cannot be memory, nor energy, nor form, for these are properties of matter and not of mind. What is the shape of a soul or a conscious mind? Is it not inclination? When we were younger and faced with a choice, did we not go with the inclined preference? Sure, we may have chosen randomly sometimes, but more often than not, we favored a choice that felt better. It felt more positive to act in a certain manner or to choose a given direction. It felt right for us to do that thing rather than this thing. It felt right for us to go in that direction. We were inclined to go that way. All children are unique. Under the same circumstances, they almost always act differently. Under the same parents, two brothers may be 180 degrees opposite, entirely different. Their personalities and inclinations may differ to enormous degrees. By the age of 6 months, these differences become apparent. These differences cannot be explained by theories of learned behavior or even genetics to this point in time. So I claim that inclination is a property of soul that is transmitted into the next life. Another way of viewing inclination is that it is the potential of the soul. Therefore, the potential of a soul through the property of inclination is transmittable. Can we influence our inclinations in this life? Can we change our inclination pattern that remains with us forever? The answer is yes. Inclination manifests itself in our behavior patterns. As we grow older, we get set in our ways. Our ways are our behavior patterns. Some of these patterns were given to us. For example, we may have blindly copied some of the traits of our parents and friends. Sometimes we chose to behave a certain way. In any case, we feel stuck with the patterns that we have acquired through situation and inclination. Our choice is clear. Do we accept the patterns that we acquired by accident, or do we change them? Do we shape our behaviors to the way that we want them to be? Should we change our behaviors, thereby changing our inclinations? There is no doubt that it is difficult. Can it be done? Of course it can. We can change our behaviors and inclinations. We can change the shape of our souls. But what behavior should we dismiss and what behavior should we acquire? What manner of behavior should we follow? Is there a proper behavior? Is there a universal way of behavior that will shape our inclinations in a more positive direction? What is the proper way to be? Is there a way that we can follow? You guessed it, the Ananke. The flow of the universe, as described by Ananke, dictates the way to be. At this point in the cycle, the flow is towards peace, balance, and consolidation. Opposition and aggression may be necessary as long as it is defensive and with the intent of preserving the peace. Opposition and aggression should be utilized as a last resort, and only in the amounts that are necessary to achieve the goal of peace and balance for all. All negative actions should be done in a least destructive manner. Peace, tranquility, and the balance among all things should be promoted and enjoyed. The proper behavior is clear. The choice is ours. So, we can change our behaviors by following Ananke, the order of God. The reward is clear. Not only will we enjoy a happier life now, but we will change our inclinations for the next life. The true lessons that we learn in life are the reflections of imbalances in our personalities that we have corrected. Our behavior changes when we learn a lesson of life. The more Ananke lessons that we learn, the happier we become. These lessons shape the soul and give it added potential, or the increased tendency to recognize the balancing points in the next life. Life is full of lessons to be learned. We always learn some Ananke type lessons during our lives. Thus, life is always additive to our souls. Life always benefits our conscious selves. Therefore, life is good in that respect. Life gives us the opportunity to improve our inclinations, to improve our behaviors. Life gives us the opportunity to copy the way to peace, the way to tranquility, the way to balance, and the way to happiness and everlasting joy. But how does a soul and its potential or inclination pass into another body of appropriate status? How could the mechanism of reincarnation be so precise? How could the soul find the right resonance so that our reward would be destined? Perhaps we can use the power of pattern recognition to suggest an answer. If you recall in the science section, we discovered a peculiar property to all particles in the universe. This property is resonance. Recall that tuning fork number 101 transmitted its energy uniquely to number 7. When struck, number 101 vibrated and resounded with the musical note of C. Tuning fork number 7 happened to be the right shape. Its natural frequency was the note of C. The musical energy had no choice. Fork number 7 started absorbing the energy of the dying number 101. All other tuning forks felt the vibration but reflected the energy. Only number 7 was capable of absorbing the radiation. As number 101 died, number 7 became alive. It resonated and vibrated and cried the note C. The energy transmission was complete. There was no loss of this material energy since it happened in a closed system. Physical reincarnation was successful again. The energy was kept whole and was transmitted to a new improved form. The soul was passed on. It was alive once more. Therefore, by analogy, we can speculate that our tuning forks, our souls, are shaped in this life and were shaped in the last. We can shape our souls to the musical note of C or the note of F sharp. The choice is ours now. But when we die, our souls will vibrate due to the shock of death. This spiritual energy will scatter throughout the closed system called the universe. Only the right opposite of a definite natural frequency will absorb our essence. The energy will remain whole and will be transmitted into a new body of appropriate status. This new body will absorb and attract spirit. The soul will have no choice, for matter needs spirit and spirit needs matter. The transmigration will be complete. Our awareness and our inclination will be alive once more. We will be given another opportunity to learn the way. This cycle of births and rebirths will go on indefinitely. Spiritual energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It is merely transmigrated from one form to another. The speculative logic is precise. We will enter a form that is in agreement with our deeds of this life. Good deeds towards peace and balance will be rewarded by a better life in the next apparent world. The earth can be a heaven for some people. It can also be a hell for others. The choice is ours. The above intriguing speculation about the soul and afterlife has one more ramification. The purpose of survival can no longer be viewed as merely existing in a mediocre way for as long as we can. There are consequences to be faced at the time of death. We are requested to survive with quality. We are motivated by positive and negative feelings in order to find the way. We are being motivated to reflect the way here on earth. We have purpose beyond survival. And at this point, we will stop the presentation. It's 39 minutes, and address that issue in the next module. This was part 12, I believe. So it'll be on part 13 that we address it. Take care. Bye-bye. See you next time.